All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining our architecture meeting today. I did send the agenda out. I'll go over it real quickly here, and then I'll show you some of the updates I've made. Thank you guys. You guys are really good at getting feedback. I've got several feedback already on several things I posted, so do appreciate how quick you guys turn some of this around. So today we're going to talk about, if you remember last time, I had drawn some data flow diagrams to a sim that I wasn't happy with, and when I reviewed them with you, you weren't happy with them either. So I've redrawn them. I want to kind of show you what I've redrawn, So I think they're a little bit better. They're more direct, functional in mind, rather than worrying about where data is coming from. I really try to identify the data. So I'll show you that. I think that made it clear anyway. The second thing on the agenda is, I'm kind of done with SIM for use case one, but I need help with SOAR and threat intelligence, because those are the other two security apps that we identified in use case one, and I'm not an expert on either of those. So I need some help. So I'm looking for some help on those, and I'll show you what I'm looking for, but we want to parallel what we did in SIM with the SOAR and the threat intelligence. That would do a nice rounding out of use case one, taking a look at those three key security ops tools, using the two scanners, the email scanner, the endpoint scanner, and the endpoint itself, and I think that gives us enough of a landscape to talk about the architecture and how OCA architecture lays out on that. And then what I did do, I had time this week, is I went and restarted the architecture paper, which I'm going to take you guys through, and already a couple of folks, thank you, David, you were one of them, have commented on it, which I really appreciate it. So what I did do is, while I was drawing the diagrams, how diagrams is just a lot of things that you don't capture in the diagram. So I was anxious to get back to write stuff down. So I did restart the architecture paper. I'll show you what I did to it, so that we have the use case now in there as a section. And I'm laying out the malware, use case one, and showing, what happens today and what would be different when we had OCA. And it needs a lot of help, and I'll tell you where it needs help. But I wanted to restart that, because, you really need to do the diagrams and the pictures. And I've been heavy on diagrams and nothing on heavy on diagrams and nothing on documentation. And that bothered me. So I did restart that. All right. So that's the agenda topics I had for this call. Any comments before I go diving into them? Okie doke.
Nope, sounds good.
Great. Hey, okay, let me find my diagram. Oh yeah, here it is. Let me do a share. It's this one. Okay. So the first thing I did is I said I wasn't happy with the diagrams last time we did this, and and I was, it just wasn't clear. So what I did, if you guys see the screenshot here, and this stuff's all in GitHub, is instead of worrying about where stuff comes from, which was tying me up in knots, I think. What I did do is say, what are the key data elements a SIM deals with? And I'm not sure this is 100% accurate, but I did go through a lot of our SIM at IBM, and looked at all the different types of data that it gets from different places. And I kind of captured it into these pictures here. The yellow box down the bottom here is really representing the IT infrastructure, the firewalls, the routers, the switches, the endpoints, things that, a lot of it's network and system data that you're capturing. Most of it's flow data, configuration data, security logs, that kind of stuff, syslogs. And then the stuff up here is more what I call more software, like vulnerability scanners and vulnerability reports from endpoints and vulnerability reports from databases. So the stuff here is more, I wouldn't call it IT infrastructure based, but more derived information from the IT resources, but not directly tied to a specific resource. It could be multiples or different types. So I put over here the kinds of things that SIM collects from all of those different environments in order for it to do what it does. So I put them that way. Hopefully that was a little clearer. You can see, stuff we get directly from the hardware, which includes, security events and, a lot of taps and flows and then things like that are coming. PCAPs are coming off the boxes, different layers from the application all down to the network layer. And then over here, information we're getting from vulnerability managers, asset data is coming from many different places. including proprietary asset that gets pulled in that customers have sometimes that overlays the data that the systems collect. Threat intelligence data, right? The IOCs, the zero-day threat kind of stuff, right? Those intelligence feeds, tips, that kind of stuff. Identities and users, the whole identity and access management world here feeds in, again, not physical systems, but logical. So I tried to put them over here. And then I put over here analytics, which can happen in any of these layers down to the yellow, any of these layers that they are in, or its own layer on top of a SIM. I've seen them everywhere. I think it's kind of a de facto thing. I think somebody mentioned on the last call a few years ago at RSA, everybody had analytics and behavioral analytics and things like that. And so I think that's very pervasive, but it is, something I wanted to capture because I think it does have some interesting attributes different than the stuff we're collecting here. And as you guys know, we just had a nice call on IOBs, indicators of behavior, which I think will fit this picture as well. So, data analysis in any layer. I just thought I'd isolate that here because I think that's pretty interesting and relevant. Okay, so I redrew this picture to be more oriented to what exactly the data the SIM collects rather than where he gets it from, because it is multiple places and I was having trouble representing it. And it was also tough to really succinctly categorize it. So let me stop there, see if there's any comments.
I really like this. This is easy to understand. It's a good presentation. This is great.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going nuts. So I couldn't find the right diagram. So thanks. Yeah, I thought that I found after I drew this, I understood myself better. So that's got to be good. Okay, so
I like
that's helpful.
it really groups things together into common kind of sections.
And that's exactly the intent. And I think there's more to it than that. I mean, if we start really diving into a lot of the automation that's happening out there as well, we could probably add that in here. I'm very sure once I understand the SCAP stuff, there's that layer that belongs in here somewhere. I just didn't know how to represent it yet. But I think it's another part of the analytics-ish kind of stuff. But it does belong here somewhere.
The only thing about it that I would be a little cautious about, and this just it's just a naming convention thing. When you call something IT infrastructure,
yep.
Like, okay, so in my experience, there are two groups there's the security group and the IT group, and they hate each other.
Yes, true.
And they like when a piece of equipment is considered, IT infrastructure versus security infrastructure, holy wars start about change management and all this stuff. I would just consider it maybe like network infrastructure or something a little more generic, just to kind of avoid that particular month.
Okay. I'd be happy to change that if you think that would help.
Wait. Okay. Oh, are you talking about? So you're talking about the yellow?
Yeah, down here.
Yep. Yeah, that's all.
So, what are you trying? I hate to sound like the ontologist on the call, but it's probably going to come as no surprise to anybody. But that's exactly how I look at these things. What is your intent of having software seem? So you're saying so within your infrastructure, these reporting data is going to be sent to the SIM.
Yep.
The SIM.
Yep. Any operating system, any server, any network equipment of any type, right? All of this stuff does get sent into our SIM in different ways, but certainly important data we collect in a SIM, both because we're going to get syslogs from everything, right? Everything.
Okay, so you're saying it's the so that is supposed and underneath you have operating systems, database, endpoints, apps, storage, and network. And this is all data that is related to those like components.
Correct.
And,
that's right.
And in a all of that combined, you're calling the IT infrastructure.
That was my intention, Forrest.
Okay, right. No, I'm not.
And to differ that from the stuff on the right, because I was getting tied up, asset data I can get from every one of these things. vulnerability reports I can get from every one of these things, right? So these
Yeah.
are more,
And
logical in
so
a
our
sense.
concern,
Yeah.
frankly, I see this kind of a placeholder for your overall environment.
Mhm. Mhm.
How about cyber environment? I don't know. I don't know if that's any better. And our concern is that by calling it IT, I mean, because it is, I mean, it's coming from, whether your network operations team has a warm, fuzzy relationship with your security team, that is literally coming from your entire network. So
Yep.
it would be coming from the domain of your network operations.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you can avoid that truism.
No, I was just, if there was some way that you could, like I said, I was just thinking maybe something like network infrastructure or something that didn't happen to share a name with one of those two groups, but it's not a big detail at all.
Yeah. Cyber environment seems to be somewhat agnostic. I don't know. Okay. I'll think about it a little bit.
Okay, yeah, let me know that it's always hard, isn't it? And I'm glad you're helping with the ontology because I struggle a lot with terms when I'm looking at some of this stuff.
So, Russ, when you said SCAP, that triggered something on the pink box.
Yep.
So you've got vulnerability reports.
Yep.
There's vulnerability intelligence, coming in from outside. And then there's also the assessment part of SCAP. And so I would say you've got assessment reports that are coming from your infrastructure. And then there's vulnerability intelligence that's coming from outside. And I don't know the correct ontological terms for those, but they're both addressing vulnerabilities, but one's a category and the other's the instances on your network.
So you think I should change from vulnerability reports to the vulnerability intelligence and vulnerability assessment? Would that help?
Yeah, I don't know the best name for the list of vulnerabilities that people have discovered. I'm not sure if intelligence is the right word, but
Okay.
whatever you're gathering from the CTI world regarding vulnerabilities.
Like the CVEs, like a
Yeah.
CVE report, things like that.
Right. Right.
I think vulnerability. It's probably it's okay. What's the concern with that one?
Just that there's two categories. That one is the vulnerabilities that exist in general, and the other is the vulnerabilities that exist on your network because you've scanned the network.
Yeah, your vulnerability assessments. That's your vulnerability assessments.
Right.
You could say reports and assessments.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I'd put it as two different boxes, but
yeah, you can do two different boxes if you want. That's
Okay.
that's one's coming in like a MITRE CVE type of stuff, yeah. And then the other one is when you're doing pen testing, you're doing vulnerability assessments, whatever you're following, you're gonna assess the actual existing vulnerabilities, which could be a technology based, it could be a configuration based. There's different types of vulnerabilities that don't necessarily line up one for one with the CVE report.
But some kind of system like a Qualys or something like that, Tenable, that's evaluating your own environments, or even just asset management, saying, holy crap, vendor said we have this thing.
And that's just one example of vulnerabilities, Andrew, because I see vulnerabilities even on endpoints and vulnerabilities in databases. So there's all different kind of scanning that happens, not only on the networks, on these other different points to point out where you've got, possible issues.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why I tried to put it over here because these things can be multiple instances all around. But yeah, you're right. The traditional network, the Tenables, as you said, and the others definitely have the network down on that kind of information. So I'll break this into two boxes. I do agree. I'd like to capture that second piece the SCAP, which I didn't think I had here. And I've done a poor job of representing SCAP because I just don't understand enough in these diagrams to represent it well. And that's something we got to fix, but that's just a
Well,
short.
I mean, so
Yeah.
automation has,
Yeah.
the assessment part, and then it has the remediation part, which is SOAR. So,
Right.
so SCAP overlaps those two things.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? Thanks for the input, guys. This is helpful. All right. So I think that that kind of was my last piece of the sim. And I am looking for help. If any of you guys have expertise on SOAR and or threat intelligence, I want to do the same thing here. Instead of putting SIM in the middle, it'll be SOAR or threat intelligence. And we want to go through the same exercise. What data does it collect? What information is it pulling? What types of data is it getting? Because that's going to be important for the ontology as we get going. Because we really need to identify where our key data flows are.
Those two tend to, especially the threat intelligence portion, tend to be my bag.
Good. So can I get some help?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. So I'll walk you through other things that we need. But it's this kind of diagram I think it'd be helpful. And then what I was also thinking is this kind of picture. See, I put SIM at the core. Now we got to put SOAR and threat intelligence here. So we need two other pictures and then represent the actions it can take with what other systems it takes them with, what data it collects. So I want also, pull a picture together that, you throw the SOAR in the middle here. And the SIM becomes a supporting actor. And again, the idea is to flush out these lines, which we all have discussed in previous calls, as great candidates for defining ontology on. All these little lines should have defined data flows and commands and stuff on them. So I'm trying to farm that out by drawing these pictures. So I'll need to do that. All right. And then the last place is here for the SOAR as well as for the threat intelligence. Talk about what kind of actions that you can take. And I just took a look at some examples. I'm sure you may have some in some of your product solutions. Is what kind of actions do you take with any of the things that are in use case one, either the endpoints, the email scanner, the endpoint scanner, the SIM or the SIM. And we just want to list out things that happen, things that you can do to take actions. Because again, that'll be some possible OpenC2/ontology work that we need to do.
I will say that in the SOAR case, going to end up being pretty open-ended probably, especially because they tend to take actions outside of maybe the normal set of components.
Yeah,
their entire job, tends to be being able to define playbooks and other sets of actions that could be something like, run an endpoint on some completely unrelated system, connect to some very specialized device. So that there may be a common set, and then there may be an other category that we have to kind of leave as the.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. I mean, I had to do that in the SIM case as well, Andrew. Just the more common things we're looking for here. I think, as we start building our ontology, we always want to get the most frequent common things architected first, and then define and prototype, if you will. Then we can iterate, right, and get more interesting. So we can iterate. So yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for. Those kind of diagrams. And we have this overarching one, so it may be incomplete, but we may find other things in here. So that's kind of completes my SIM case. There was nothing really else I can do. So I did turn. The next part of the meeting is I did turn to our old document, the old trusty architecture document, which I've neglected for at least 2 months. I put a revision 3 out there. David, you already sent me some comments. Appreciate that. And Mitch sent me some comments as well. Thanks, Mitch. And so what I did here, if you remember this old diagram, this old architecture diagram, I went back and threw the case study at the back. The intention now was, if you remember, the architecture was kind of introducing the projects and the main capabilities, I guess I'd say, or like things like, not also mentioning things like OpenC2 and sticks, underlying things that we rely on. so remember the first part of the thing was more of a overview of the architecture. We still have work to do on that, but also, our projects and, what their key objectives are, and, how they fit in. And so that way, if you remember, I wrote that up a while ago, and that's all this stuff up here. I'm not going to go through that right now, but you're more than welcome to refresh your memory, because I'm sure if you read through it, you will find things that need to be fixed. So I went, and what I did is said the intention of this document is now put the use case in here, which is why we're doing the use case, just to demonstrate how, the OCA architecture, if you look at it in action to a use case, what's the difference? What are we doing? What happens in the normal case, and how does that change with OCA? And that's what the intention of these sections are. As you can see, I have, a malware use case, current approach, which I put here, which again is our diagrams we've already talked about. So I just kind of pulled them in here, and then put words around. As I said, I've taken a lot of notes, but just diagrams. I was drawing these. So I started adding some verbiage to these things, the things that we talked about, or things that were important. And the intent here was pointing out, here's the current environment, and then as we go into if you look at OCA's approach, right, I broke it down into the data flows as well as the command structures. Right. And I ended up showing the difference between today's world, where we've got individual, from the SIM point of view, again, just want to make it simple, just take one system. All these queries are unique to every one of these systems, and the data flows coming back are unique to every one of these systems. And you take that against what we're doing with Stick Shifter. Now I have one query that I can get against all of these systems. So again, I show the picture, and I have a little verbiage around what's different about OCA, just given the use case of the malware detection we're talking about. So that's the intent of this section, right? I want to show the SIM, the SOAR, and the threat intelligence, because obviously the more, pieces we're talking about, the better value OCA has. So it comes out even better as you kind of look at the big picture, right? If you look at this mess here, right, and you think about how much we're going to simplify about what we're doing here, it will come out as we go. Let me show you the SIM case, the SOAR case, and the threat intelligence case, and how everything is going to be a lot more simplified. And then we can go through what a simplified means. There's many different things to simplified, and then we're going to expand on in here. So that's the idea here. So I did put some verbiage around these. I put some pictures out here. As I said, I put some new ones out here that showed the Stick Shifter in one query can actually go to all these at once, so the exact same format. And the interesting thing is I took it from the perspective of the SIM, but also took it from the perspective of the endpoint. If I'm an endpoint vendor, for example, I don't know if you're an endpoint vendor, this is how many different times you have to write an endpoint push to Splunk, to QRadar, to all the threat intelligence programs. I think I talked to Carbon Black, they must have 15, 20 of these things, which is basically pushing the same data in different formats to all these tools. So if you think of it the other way around, so I said it from the application side, which is the SIM SOAR, but I also wrote it up from the side of the requesting application, responding application. And you can see on that side, I haven't drawn the picture yet, but you'll be able to see that you can do the same, you can answer the same queries for any of these guys. I don't care if you're a SIM, SOAR, or threat intelligence, you're going to be able to respond to any of them with the same kind of syntax. So that's what I'm trying to capture here, is that's OCA in action, right? And what I'm showing with the query response is the Stick Shifter side, and what I'll be showing on the command side is the OpenC2 Ontology side. So that's the intention. Okay, let me stop there and see if there's everybody understand what I'm trying to do here?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, cool. Okay, and as you can see, I got a big section in here, and maybe David, you and I need to spend some time together. Is how do we capture the value of SCAP versus the way it's done today? And I haven't been able to draw, as you know, in the previous pictures I did with the SIM, I wasn't able to draw the SCAP in there because we didn't really understand, how it fit with the scanners and was there flows. And I know you guys were working on it, so somewhere along the way, I do want to kind of scoop up whatever you have in terms of thoughts. And we figure out what I want to show again is that Stick Shifter is an example of, is normalizing, if you will, the query response problem. And SCAP, I think, is normalizing, right, the ability to pull information together. And in the first case, it's configuration. from all the different types of things in a consistent, if you will, proxy to any kind of configuration status you want, I think.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
SCAP was sort of, NIST's brand
Yep.
for the CVEs and the XCCDFs, a set of data formats that we're using. Then when we came to OCA, we'd been talking about this SCAP version 2 for a system for continuous monitoring, and it would still use those data formats for vulnerabilities, but it would also have a set of interactions for doing the assessments themselves. So rather than calling SCAP a separate category, I think it fits into the architecture that you've already got. Like, again, there's the assessment piece, whether you're doing endpoint assessment or IT infrastructure or network infrastructure device assessment. You're collecting assessment data, and then you're remediating it, and that's the SOAR, the OpenC2 part.
Okay. Okay.
So SCAP itself as a name isn't really a separate box like SIM or
Okay.
SOAR.
Right. That's helpful, David. So I'm trying to figure out what you just said previously, and I'll listen to it on the recording. I'll write something up. How we can capture that so that people understand how what it's doing in the overall architecture. I think that would be helpful. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So we'll try and tackle that next. Yeah, so here's the command responses. And again, I just took the two ontologies we had that existed today. I'm sure there'll be more. And the more would again be that list I showed you of other commands that are possible. And Mark, I'll leave that to you to figure out how we prioritize it and start adding to this list. But there'll be a certain set of things that we can use that'll span, can span multiple different security systems with one particular issuance of a command or a query. Just again, we gotta kind of figure that out. And I did reference the OpenC2 project. I find they go together here. And I think David, you sent me something that helped me understand how to blend them right. So I'll do a better job on that here because they relate to each other. And I agree with you. We need a picture.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Mr. Warren, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Yeah. So as you were describing the, what we have now versus using the OCA approach, where at the highest level would you say in this document do you describe the benefit? The benefit, and of course it's the benefit is the difference.
It should be up here, I think.
The reason I'm asking, I'll get to the point. The reason I'm asking is because, yes, common message bus, common formats, formatting. Okay, so, right, cohesive, aligned set of components that work together efficiently.
And I may need to fix this, Mitch, but yeah, it was intended to be up here. Yeah.
Stay up there if you would, please. Where you were, just where you were. Yeah. So that the last part of that paragraph that leads up to the bulleted list, that cohesive, aligned set of components that work together efficiently. That is the value proposition of OCA.
Yep.
Yep. So I think you'd want to, in the use case that you have, what came through for me when I looked at the images, like you had the red lines and the kind of a bit of a mess of cross connection and so forth, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I, for me, I saw red, and so I'm like, oh, well, that's bad, right? And that they're not working together efficiently, right? So that image sort of speaks to this sentence, but I think we could do better. I think we could have more words in that use case and repeating. You got to repeat over and over again the value proposition here, but repeating this, how things are more cohesive and that they're working together more efficiently in your use case. And so is there a spot, is that happening in your use case? Because I only scanned it over early on, so I want to leave a possibility that I missed something.
It is, but it's probably not what you're suggesting. I don't think I've highlighted or been consistent enough that I should be consistent between the top and the bottom. So if you look at, when I did go through this, right, here's some examples of eliminate the need for multiple web connections.
Right.
Right.
Now,
enabling.
what's interesting there, you're assuming something, right? We're assuming that eliminating point-to-point independent connections is a benefit, right? And I think it is. I mean, but I'm not always sure that, you know, some people might say, well, that's great because point-to-point communication gives you low latency, right? Anyway,
Yeah,
I
I
think,
think there are going to be times that has to happen, and I don't know that we want to say that that's not happening. I think what we should say is maybe extend that statement. And Mitch, I totally agree with you, but I think in addition to efficient, I think we should say loosely coupled and event driven, and then
yeah,
in these diagrams, I think we need to start using some of these terms of given, when, then. We don't
yeah.
care who stores it, or if something's stored. Like that's a
And let me,
subsystem issue.
yeah, let me add another benefit that's going on here that work efficiently together. What's
Yep.
really interesting about standards, right, is that they can be a heterogeneous, like the tripwire stuff could work with the, you know, Tenable stuff
Yep.
potentially. Like what a
Yep.
better world that would be in general for everybody, right?
Yep.
With tripwire would make more money, Tenable would make more money, we'd be more secure. Anyway, a little bit of
Yeah, but I agree with you guys. That's why I go ahead and edit. And I do want to point out one thing,
oh,
Des.
okay.
I did say independent connections. You're certainly going to have connections, but the point was, in order to talk to Mark, I got to talk in French. In order to talk to Mitch, I got to talk in Russian. In order to talk to Andrew, I got to talk in Swahili. I mean, that's the point, right? We're going to talk in one language to all three of you, right? And so it's not the fact that we're eliminating the connections. It's these independent, the connections that I'm talking about. And
Okay,
that's
so
important. Yeah.
what was the the two bullets you mentioned? There was we wanted to be event driven and something
Loosely
was
coupled.
loosely coupled. That's right. So the third bullet in that list is using common formats, and that's what you're talking about. Independent is proprietary formats.
Yep. Yep.
So yes, loosely coupled, event driven, using common formats.
Excuse me, I probably you heard me eating, pardon me. But the point here is, the point I wanted to make was reemphasize the value proposition in your use case.
Yep. Yep.
Connect the dots for people. Like the common event, the common data structures allow you to be loosely coupled, right? I mean, actually make that statement. And then I think that will make it really hammer it home for like, oh, this, I should really check out this OCA thing. That was my whole point there. Thanks for listening.
No, they're good points. And I guess if we're going to bring out those new themes of, the as you said, loosely coupled, event driven, then we really got to start up here. We don't even mention that up here. Right? Because that was, our objectives this is where I got this from, was right from our objectives. So I think we want to, if that's important to our theme, which I have no problems with, we should add it up here somewhere. So it's consistent at the high level with how are we doing it. An example will show you how. So
I like the loosely coupled event driven because there's already evidence in the industry that that's a better thing.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
that there's some context built around that phrase or those phrases.
Right. So I got to throw it in our approach here somewhere. So we want to. The point I'm making is we want to be consistent from the top level all the way down to the bottom, and not introduce new terms at the bottom that don't match the terms at the top. I want it to be consistent. So I agree. We got to word that a little bit. So again, as I said, Mitch, I do have some others in here as I was writing the examples. As I said, I just got to somehow highlight them better. I'm not doing that very well here, so I got to figure that out.
Yeah, it's tough. It's easy to be an editor, hard to be the author.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I got you. So there's a single command for multiple applications, consistent responses. Those are all good things. Right. Any application. This is the flexibility to query other systems. Not even, as a matter of fact, you could show up later on the horizon and install the application. And if it talks our lingo and OCA, welcome to the party. Right. There's no unique thing I have to do to talk to you. You're on the bus and you're talking our lingo. Right. So I got to bring that out some more.
It might be even worth like a formatting thing here. Like you could have, sometimes in books you'll see, a note or a little area like benefit. Benefit, loosely coupled.
Yeah, you're right. I've seen little grayed up areas sometimes that that do that. Yep.
Right.
I agree with you. I need something visual because it's, all these words, you'll never see it.
yeah. And I realize we're selling here a little bit,
That's
but
okay.
to
Yeah.
some extent, I think that's what this document has to do.
Absolutely. I completely 100% agree with you. It has to sell a little bit. It has to be obvious too. And you don't want to, as you can see, I'm up to 20 some pages and we haven't got it all done yet. So it's going to be relatively large. So we have to be real succinct where we have our key messages. So I agree 100%. I need to work on that to get that through. So anyway, this is where I left off. I got some more to do, but I do agree. Everything Mark, the things you talked about, and Mitch, just go ahead in there and edit the document. It's again, it's in a place where you can do the community editing, and you'll see some edits already in there by the A students that have already shown up and given me comments. But you can also be an A student by putting your stuff in there. So I'm looking for feedback.
So would you like direct edits or would you just like comments?
No, just direct edit right in here. See, here's some.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, throw it in here because then you can see what everybody else is saying and work off each other.
Okay.
Right. So just feel free. That's why we put it in this format so you can all, collaborate. It's easier to collaborate when you can see everybody else's comments. And that's okay with me. And I can go back and look through the document to get this sorted out. So just finished this yesterday. I'm looking for feedback and edits for the next call. The intention is to update it and talk about any comments that I've got. And then I can work with you, Andrew, on the SOAR. I'll help you with the SOAR and the threat intelligence ones. And David, I want to work with you on figuring out how to capture, well, a picture of the OpenC2/Ontology layers, and B, how we represent the value of the SCAP work better than I'm doing right now, because I don't think I'm doing a good job at it.
Yep.
Okay, is that okay, guys? I mean, those are the to-dos I had follow up on.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, so I am done with my agenda. Mark, did you want to add anything from the technical steering committee side? I know we're trying to save some time for that too.
I think this group is the technical steering committee. So
yeah, no, yeah. What would you like to tell them? What would you like them to do?
No, let me. So I never have as much time as I'd really like to.
Yeah.
Do this side job, but
yeah.
let me share kind of what I have started working on.
Great.
So I stole some of these pictures and from that great presentation on ontology, and just kind of referencing them. I think some of that we want to bring forward, but thinking about what is the ontology, and so I'll share this, and I'm just kind of taking a pass at up leveling a little bit and then drilling down. If I don't get the beginning starting point right, then I just have a hard time thinking about it. But like we discussed, I went and looked at technology categories from Gartner. I went through their entire list of technology categories, and these were the ones I pulled out that were directly security related or something that needs to be secured. Given the lack, I was surprised actually. I thought there were many more security technology categories that they track. But like hyperconverged infrastructure, I think there's a place, to maybe pick some of their other categories, like an asset or something. Also went and looked at SANs, and then I'm gonna finish this list and start another list, but just off the top of my head, I think might be as good of a list, network security, endpoint security, et cetera, for some of these things that don't really fit well. And then, from the top, drilling down, kind of trying to think about ontology, starting with what the things are at the top that we decide on. And then for each of those things, and they might not all apply, but what can that thing see? What does that thing know? Or, what does it learn or derive? and what can that thing do? And I think that we could put, things under each of these categories. We could come up with better, more scientific or philosophical, kind of ontological words than see, know, and do, but something like that. And then event driven. I think there's a big difference between orchestration, and what we really want is choreography between all of our different security solutions. The end goal, of course, Nirvana is automation. And I think as OCA, like, we're looking at the problem of doing that. That's all well and good to talk about automation and AI and all these things, but all of these other things have to happen, and an ontology needs to be applied for this really to be done to the extent that it's going to be beneficial.
Was that your intended pun there, OCA?
No, it was not. But
well recognized.
Oh man, yeah, no, not at all. I wish I was that energetic, but yeah. So it's kind of, there's like, I've tried this, different ways. Thinking about, there's just a bunch of stuff in here that I keep
Yeah,
dragging over. But this
like a
I'm gonna
brain
try
box.
and
Yeah,
it's kind of how
yeah.
my mind works sometimes. But I want to try and get this cleaned up. But any thoughts or feedback from anyone? I think really for me, nailing this down, and these are the things that you're working on for us and that this group has been doing. I think drilling down into, what does a SIM, see, know, or do is what we would do well to define across, 5 to 10 different things. And then we can say that the things that are seen should be represented in and made available in a sticks format. If they're not, then we use stick shifter. And we can put SCAP and stick shifter in where they need to go. We can abstract all of these things away from DXL, but simply state that they should be connected to some common thing. And I think the formats and the ontology stuff is more important than what the transport, or whether it's an API or an event stream, et cetera. So
one thing I'm
that's
thinking,
what I've been working on.
One thing I'm thinking of, Mark, and your automation theme is triggered that in my head, is in order to really get to automation, a lot of what we're doing is enabling us to do that. I mean, you can't automate an environment that has non-architected data formats, right? And it doesn't have the right set of APIs, right? And so I think a lot of, we could probably draw, an analogy out that says, to get to the nirvana you talk about for automation and to make things a lot more defensive and real time, with systems interpreting and taking actions, you really need to have, right, a common ontology. You really need to have the ability to address multiple systems quickly in choreography with each other, I guess you'd say, versus independently. So you keep things in sync. I mean, I think, that to me, if we want to build up a little on the automation point, is, to get there, we need, you need to progress off this, proprietary one-off individual data models with unique commands across the environments, because we'll never automate that ever, right?
Yeah, and I think starting with this, when you're, I love this quote. Like when we're looking at these flows and very specific use cases and some of the C4 diagrams, that will never be complete. Like it's just, there's an endless number of variations and whatever that are going to happen. But if we start with what does a thing see, the telemetry, the original measurement of a given sensor, then we can back up to that. What does the thing see, and thinking in terms of state, we can always view state or get state from something that can see something. That's
Yes,
what
certainly.
working.
The interesting thing on what can you see, right? In today's security world is it's very hard to get the scene. You've got a lot of noise, right? You've got a lot of things that you have to head correlate. You've got a lot of data that is it's somewhere out there that you're trying to figure out where the heck it is to bring it in so you can actually see what it is that's going on, right? AKA the Pwnymon reports and how quick it is to somebody finds out they got a breach. It's not hours, it's
Yeah,
months.
yeah,
Because the
but
scene, yeah, the
but almost
scene is
always,
impossible. Right. Right.
almost always though, the breach was seen.
Yeah.
It's just not known.
Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
So are we all going to be able to attend the demo on next week on the 29th at what time is it? 11 a.m. I don't know why it's only for 45 minutes. Yeah, 11 a.m. Eastern on the 29th. You should have all got an invite to the Precisely demo.
I
Yes,
did get the
yes.
invite. I see it. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So that is an implementation of graph-based technology, which can be organized according to the OCA ontology.
Okay.
So they're going to provide a demonstration for us to how you can take and analyze your data with your data arranged according to this potentially according to this common model that we're developing. They're just doing one that they've already developed. It's not the OCA ontology, but hopefully you'll be able to imagine, oh yeah, we would insert OCA ontology here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that might help us get a
Yeah.
grasp around where we're going a bit.
Right. Can you make sure you
So-
record that for us when they do it? Would that be
Yeah,
okay?
they're going to do it on Microsoft Teams, and we'll make sure that they record it. Yeah.
Please do, because I know a lot of people want to see it. I agree with you. I think that'll be a fundamental demonstration that will be very applicable to what we're doing. I agree. I think that I'm looking forward to that.
So you've got a lot of, the use cases help us to get some of the ideas that we want to make sure we get included into the model or the ontology, the concepts in the ontology and the entities that are articulated in the ontology. You've got a bunch of other, Mark's grabbed a whole bunch of other sources out there. We may not need to use all of them. We might not have to get every single buzzword related to cybersecurity into the model. And I think Russ mentioned it. We'll start simple and iterate our way into more complex. So
yes,
we could probably just see if we could get data that's related to some of these use cases. That would be a representative data related to some of these use cases, and kind of start from there. And so take a look. So take a look at the stuff that they model, the log files and everything that they'll pull into this event or into this demonstration, and we can talk with them about some risks. I think it'll be very helpful.
I agree.
They're not cybersecurity SMEs per se, but they know data and how to clean it and organize it and integrate it, and so this might help make it a little bit more tractable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. I had a call last week with one of McAfee's data scientists and kind of shared with them, what we're trying to do in OCA. And, I basically, I tried to ask, I don't think I asked it well, but I was getting at, what would you do if you didn't have to clean and, munge data before your analytics, like if you could have the sensors and the controls and all the things that are the origins of that data, write it as needed, like what would you do? And what do you want? What data are you missing? You've got a magic wand, I'll get you any data you want. And they couldn't think like that. I think it was just foreign. It seems that they're very used to, like, this is what data we have, and let me see what I can do with it, versus thinking about.
Yeah, and see, you're gonna have different cases, and we'll talk about this in the demo. You're gonna have different data available in different instances, different cases, different tool suites. It's gonna have slightly different data. And if you're just modeling it based on that data, we're going to have no chance of interoperability. So we have to have a common model to which we can map any data at some point. And so we'll give an example of how we would do that because the ontology is not going to be complete. It's never going to be complete to everybody's potential use cases, but at least you give us a starting point so that we can hope to increase interoperability at some level. So yeah, so I think it'll help. I think the 29th demo will be helpful. I think they'll be amenable to doing it again. You know, they'll be looking for business. I have to let them do their, you know, 5-minute pitch of, you know, what Precisely is all about and all that too. I'm sure we all appreciate that as industry. Yeah. But I think it'll be very insightful.
Yep.
I just had a thought, Russ. I saw a press release that IBM's doing a bunch of work with Palantir. Do you think we could maybe, you know, I think they're another interesting.
Palantir is not gonna, they are not interested. I'll just tell you straight up, there's no Palantir on this call, is there? They are not interested in using your interoperable knowledge model in their environment. There is nothing OCA-ish about Palantir, if you ask me. Maybe that's only my 2 cents.
It's a different approach.
But they're all about vendor lock-in and making a lot of money out of their ability to lock in their customers. So I don't think that they'd be very motivated to help us with interoperability. That's just me, though.
No, I think that's spot on, and I think we will face that in the security industry as well. I mean, that's what we're up against.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They're not going to be they want to make money. I appreciate that. They want to make money, but that's just a different. And for SAIC, it's easy to say that because we don't make a lot of products. We're often responsible for integrating others, so we have that vested interest in interoperability that other vendors don't.
Correct.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure I carve out. I think I've got some time tomorrow. Actually, I could spend solid 3 or 4 hours on this, and I don't know. Can I upload a PowerPoint to Google? I mean, I can put it in Google Docs, I guess. But do they have some other open PowerPoint format or something they can convert to?
Yeah, the Google Slides and spreadsheets and docs.
Or you could can't you just make a PDF out of your PowerPoint?
Yeah, but I'd like to, collaborate with everybody on this.
Oh, gotcha.
Once we get the top, 3 or 4 slides nailed down, then we'll have a slide for endpoint protection, and we break down see, no, do, or some words like that, and we go, SIM, SOAR, vulnerability management, and we put SCAP in there, and start building it out.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, see, no, do. Am I on? Like, see, no, do. That's interesting. I was thinking about all that as you're going through that, Mark. So I don't know if the no piece. The no piece is the knowledge that you want to discern from your data that comes in. So I don't know if I don't know if you would actually model all 3 of those in your ontology. It's like a goal of your ontology, and then the do is the response, is what you would do as a result of the knowledge that you've just discerned. Like, oh, you've got this data. I've now determined, oh, that's an insider threat. Okay, now I have to shut off access to that person, and those could be modeled as steps. You could actually do that. It's, articulation of this. But I don't know if you actually put all of that. I don't think it's necessarily necessary to put all of that in the ontology. It would be like the goal of employing a knowledge model. So it's okay. We'll figure it out.
No. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of no is state. So there's probably something in between. There is something in between see and no, an analytic, or the derivation of something that now this user is now known malicious or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then, once that's happened, now it's known, and it's a state.
Right. I'm with you. Okay, I gotta
I don't
drop.
know if that makes sense,
That's
but
fine.
yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about.
No, it does. It's interesting. Yeah, got it. I'm tracking.
And that's where your quote comes in. When the things that you know are what you represent in your tables, you've got a list of known bad users.
Right. Or a reputation of a file or an IP address or, an asset and known vulnerabilities about it, and then when something happens based on that event, I need to go find out what is known about the vulnerability of a given system. And then that informs what I need to do.
Okay, we're gonna demo this. This is gonna be in the demo. So that's good. All right, I think this is gonna be interesting on Thursday. I hope so. Hopefully, I'm not overselling it, but this is
No,
what
I'm
our
looking forward
discussion
to
just insights you guys when we were prepping for it today. All right, I gotta
Awesome.
drop.
Well,
Have a good
appreciate it.
evening, folks.
All right.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for the call. Appreciate your input.
Bye, everybody. Talk soon.
Okay, bye.
See you
Cheers.
later.